It's the 1980s. A boogeyman is roaming throughout the day and night, killing random people. A serial killer displaying some of the vilest behaviors imaginable. As the bodies pile up, investigators are stumped until, that is, one courageous man decides to place a phone call. My name is M. William Phelps. I'm an investigative journalist and the New York Times best-selling author of dozens of true crime books. I've dedicated the past 26 years of my life to helping families of the missing and murdered. Join me. We're crossing the line. Elgin Beach Park, located on Okaloosa Island along the Panhandle in Florida, is just west of Destin Beach. Elgin is a private beach, open to military personnel and their families only, as well as federal employees and those connected to them. It's an incredible beach, hot showers, large pavilions, and of course the awe-inspiring views of the Gulf. You know, that turquoise water, you can see through, it's so darn clear, glittering like diamonds within the abundance of Florida sunshine. That's what we're talking about here. Paradise, some might call it. 19-year-old Tommy Lou Whidden, a junior at Okaloosa Walton Junior College nearby, is enjoying a bit of warm March weather, soaking up the sun and surf on the 26th of that month. It's 1985, such a banner year for so many reasons, at least from what I can remember. Where Tommy Lou is on Elgin Beach is about a half-mile west of the Officers Beach Club, where at any time of the day during the warmer months, you can find all sorts of high-ranking military hanging out. Tommy is wearing her bikini, tanning, relaxing, just enjoying some downtime from her studies. She's a beautiful young woman with brown hair, feathered into that classic 80s style, thick and full, and just down, touching her shoulders. She lives not too far away, a neighborhood that is, reports say, close-knit, where neighbors take care of one another. Tommy's mother would later tell people she's just as good as she is pretty, simply meaning that Tommy has a big heart and those in her life think of her as a joy to be around. She has a pony she likes to ride, and in high school, Tommy was the manager of the high school football team and the bat girl for the baseball team, which seems fitting for what she wound up choosing as a major in college, physical therapy. Tommy is so passionate about fashion as a hobby, she actually keeps track on a calendar of what she wears each day so as never to overdo one particular outfit. On that March 26th day, Tommy had plans to meet one of her best friends at the beach, so the two of them could work on their tans together and catch up on school gossip. For some reason, Tommy's friend had to cancel. And so Tommy is out there by herself, enjoying the day without her friend. As she is lying down sunning herself, some young dude, later known to be 17 years old and a dishwasher leaving his job nearby, walks over to Tommy. Without much conversation we know of, the dishwasher, Frank Walls is his name, pulls out a knife and slits Tommy's throat, killing her. She's done nothing but set up a towel on a military beach, and here is this psychopath pulling out a knife, killing her for no apparent reason other than she was there. Frank Walls then rummages through Tommy's things and comes up with her car keys. He soon finds her red Mercury hatchback, hops in, and takes off. Tommy, of course, doesn't come home that night, and her family is beyond concerned. If she was going somewhere or was going to be late, she'd always call. Tommy was good about letting her family know where she was and where she was going. So, they begin phoning several of her friends. Nobody has seen or heard from her. Next, those friends begin arriving at the Whidden household to help out the family any way they can. The Whiddens call the police. At first, we couldn't get the police to help us, Tommy's mother later tells a local newspaper. Seems about right to me for the time. She'll come back. Don't worry. She's in college. She probably slept over a friend's house. But a family knows. They just feel it inside. A few of Tommy's family members head out to begin searching for her themselves. Two of them locate her red Mercury. It's parked strangely behind a building near the beach on Okaloosa Island. It feels as though someone has dumped the car there. Certainly Tommy would never leave it like it was in such a place. That same day, just a day after she is reported missing, someone is taking a leisurely walk along the beach when they come up on Tommy's body. Tommy had actually gone off to a more private section of the beach, not necessarily out there along the main area where most people tan and swim. Police are baffled. Investigators step in and start asking questions. The same things we might think they'd ask. Any enemies? No. Old boyfriends? No. Who could have done this? Don't know. Anybody from school who might have been stalking her? Not that we know of. They're stumped. Why would a young college girl be murdered out on the beach during the middle of the day? Then a tourist comes forward and tells police that she was out near that same section of the beach the previous week. Some young dude, she says, came up and began attacking her. She fought him off, and then she ran. That girl gives a description of the guy to police. Law enforcement doesn't know it yet, but it's a description of 17-year-old psychopath Frank Walls, that dishwasher who killed Tommy Lou. Born in 1967 in Ocean City, Florida, Walls is working at a place called Quincy's, washing dishes. He's truly not capable of much anything else. He's the loser type, right from the time he can literally start committing crimes. His first foray into the criminal world is burglarizing businesses and homes and roaming through neighborhoods and peeping inside the windows of women. One of his roommates at the time he kills Tommy Lou says later that he hated living with Walls because he was so negative all the time, and Walls loved nothing more than talking about things like how much he wanted to rape and kill women. Not for nothing. But if my roommate said anything like that, he's out or I'm out. But I ain't living with the dude anymore, that's for damn sure. One thing Walls himself says later is that as long as he could remember, quote, I've had totally unexplained episodes of uncontrollable rages in which I lose total contact with reality. He knows this, mind you, from a very young age, and yet he does nothing to speak up or get treatment or try to figure out what is going on. Instead, he leans into his fantasies and, as he says himself, embraces that uncontrollable rage bubbling inside of him. As law enforcement searches for Tommy Lou Whidden's killer, Frank Walls maintains his rather low profile as a dishwasher. There is no rhyme or reason to the victims Walls chooses. There's no pattern, no hidden meaning behind his choice of victims. These are innocent people just in his path at the time he decides he wants to take a life. He is a terrorist, really, without an ideology, out in the world looking to cause death and destruction. Heading almost into the most western edge of Florida, a place called Wright. It's now about 17 months after Frank Walls's reported first murder at Elgin Beach. A man on his way home from work is walking along Duval Street in Wright when out of the corner of his eye, he sees a red belt hanging from a tree off the road in the woods. This catches his attention. It's an odd thing. He works his way in through some rather heavy brush and starts walking around a densely wooded area. Not far into the brush, he sees a woman lying on the ground with obvious signs that she has been murdered. Frank Walls had been heading down the same road on September 16, 1986, when he came across 24-year-old wife and mother of three, originally from Tennessee, Cynthia Sue Condra, as she sat inside her van. Cynthia's body is found close to 4 p.m. in that brush-filled area off the road near a landfill. The medical examiner is, of course, summoned to the scene. It's gruesome. Cynthia has been stabbed 21 times. Another rage-fueled murder by Walls for no apparent reason. This time, Walls had dragged his victim off the road in an effort to try to hide the body. So his method of murder has now evolved to include making decisions in order to get away with the crime, which tells us that he is clearly thinking about what he is doing. It's the second murder that we know of by Walls within 2 years. My bet is there were others in between. We just haven't found out about them yet. They fingerprint Cynthia's van, which is parked not too far from her body, hoping to lift a few prints from her killer, obviously. It's thought by investigators that there was some sort of altercation there by the road near where the van was found. The other thing about Cynthia's murder is that here we have a second Walls victim who had not been sexually assaulted. Cynthia was fully clothed when they found her body. Walls's appetite at this time includes only a thirst for blood and murder. Once again, days turn into weeks and investigators are stumped. They have no idea who killed Cynthia Condra. This, mind you, as every available cop in the Okaloosa County Sheriff's Department is out pounding the pavement, knocking on doors, helping to investigate the murders. In these pre-DNA forensic technology days of investigating murder, it was about searching to find that one break. Someone who saw something, someone who knows a dude who is acting weird, talking about strange things, etc. Or maybe a fingerprint, which was rare, comes back and points you to a specific known criminal. What I find curious about Frank Walls at this time of his killing spree is that he has not sexually assaulted his two victims. If you recall, I mentioned earlier how his roommate will later tell authorities that Walls was obsessed with rape and murder, and yet he commits 2 murders without raping his victims. The sheriff's department has no clue who killed Tommy or Cynthia, and yet after months of investigating Cynthia's case, they do come out and say they suspect what they call an ominous pattern. They think that perhaps the 2 murders are related. Now it's May 1987, and Audrey Gigi, a 47-year-old employee at Keltec, a firearms manufacturer in Cocoa, Florida, is at home after work one night inside her Ocean City, Florida trailer. She hears a noise. Then it becomes louder. And then boom. Frank Walls is inside her trailer, wrestling the woman to the floor. Gaining easy control of her, Walls, being a fairly decent-sized youngster then, he does something he hasn't so far. He makes Audrey take off her clothes. Then he rapes her. Then, instead of killing her, he leaves. And he allows her, at least for now, to live. This shows us how scared he was by what he'd done. He didn't know what to do, actually, after he raped her. So he panicked and he took off. Not far from Audrey's trailer, however, as Walls is running away, he suddenly stops. And he reconsiders. He turns around and he heads back to Audrey Geegee's trailer to confront her once again. Let's take our first break here. There's a lot more to come, including an update in Frank Walls' case from 2025. And I hope you agree that with these more popular, a word I hate to use in this context, serial killer cases that I profile here, my aim on Crossing the Line with M. William Phelps is to cover them in a different way, maybe more from a psychological viewpoint, in order to gain a better understanding of what is going on inside the mind of the psychopath. Which is one reason why there is not a lot of information, as I'd like to include, about all the victims involved. With that said, I'll be right back. You are listening to Crossing the Line with M. William Phelps, a true crime podcast. When May 21st, 1987 comes around, and Audrey Geegee doesn't show up for work, one of her co-workers heads over to her trailer to see what is going on. It's unlike Audrey to miss work. Right away, rolling up on the trailer, it's clear something is off. The co-worker walks in, and there's her friend, nude and bloodied and dead. More of Frank Walls' work. This time, though, he included rape in his killing, as Audrey had been stabbed to death and brutally sexually assaulted. Psychologists tell us that when a serial killer or psychopath evolves from murder to rape and murder, it's a clear sign of his violent fantasies deepening and his reliance on those fantasies as a coping mechanism for isolation and his very low self-esteem. They mention what is called a feedback loop, in which every violent act fuels the next one, giving more depth to the fantasy. So committing the same murder over and over again doesn't work anymore. It does not produce the same high as in a drug addict needing more dope. A growing addiction they are in desperate need of feeding. Their fantasy world of violence is becoming more extreme, which will involve more extreme manners of violence, making them even that much more scarier and dangerous to the public than they were when they started killing. Frank Walls fits into this explanation classically. What I just described is Frank Walls. The acute example of this explanation would be Israel Keyes, who raped and murdered random people and couples all over the country for, some claim, about 15 years before he finally got caught and, thank you, killed himself while in custody. What I'm saying is, Frank Walls is no Israel Keyes. All that being said, where do you go from here if you are Frank Walls? How is it that you can continue to feed the beast inside of you? You've killed 3, with 1 brutal rape now behind you. How will you continue to stimulate that grandiosity churning inside your brain the next time you decide to kill? Early in the day, July 23rd, 1987, something is going on at Lot 15 within the Greenwood Mobile Home Park on Jackson Street, which is off Racetrack Road, close to where Cynthia Sue Condra's body was found. This is in Fort Walton Beach, near the Elgin Air Force Base. With this location, Frank Walls, as you can see, has one specific area he is focused on. He doesn't much move outside the county. This tells us he doesn't think about tomorrow more than he does today, the moment. What I mean by that is, those more street-smart serial killers like Keyes and maybe Samuel Little are able to look beyond the kill and make decisions based on not wanting to get caught. Walls is uninterested in this way of thinking, or he simply cannot think this way. His only desire is to feed his fantasies, to tame that beast inside of him when the beast demands to be fed. Edward Alger is a 22-year-old Air Force Base airman. He lives with his 20-year-old girlfriend, Anna Louise Peterson, in that Greenwood Park trailer park I mentioned. The previous night, July 22nd, Alger and Peterson were home sleeping when Alger heard something fall over. He gets up to check it out. It's the boogeyman, Frank Walls. There were at least 2 vehicles parked in front of this residence, giving the clear impression that the residence was occupied. Walls is inside now. He cuts a length of curtain cord and proceeds to the bedroom where Alger and Peterson are sleeping. Armed with a knife, Walls had no doubt awakened the couple by turning the light on and kicking over that large fan, because they are both now wide awake. In any event, Walls is, this time, prepared. Realizing perhaps he cannot likely take on 2 people at the same time, with one of them being an Air Force man, Walls had brought a firearm with him. Walls shows them both his weapon and orders the girlfriend to tie up the threat within the situation, Edward Alger. She does as she is told, tying her boyfriend by his wrists and ankles. Then Walls ties her up and shoves a sock in her mouth. As Walls is tying up Ann Peterson, however, Alger is working his bindings loose, and he is able to maneuver his way out of his wrist ligatures. But his feet are still bound. Nude, with his feet tied, Alger jumps off the bed and begins struggling with Frank Walls. Alger actually cuts his ankles up as he and Walls fight, having stepped into the grill of the fan on the floor. Fighting, Alger bites Walls in his thigh. Walls pulls out his knife and slits Alger's throat, rendering him hurt but still alive. As they continue to struggle, Alger's then bites Walls on one of his hands. Walls is forced to drop his knife. With Alger still alive and fighting, Walls takes out his gun and shoots the guy in the head 3 times, killing him instantly. The terror Ann Peterson must have endured while this was going on in front of her, realizing her boyfriend has been murdered and she is next, is insurmountable. Hard to even consider, hard to place yourself in. That poor, poor woman. Walls then heads back to the front of the trailer where Ann Peterson is tied up. According to court documents, he rips off her clothes, picks her up, and puts her on the bed there in the front. Ann curls up and begins screaming and crying. "I just killed your boyfriend," Walls tells her. Of course, he sexually assaults Peterson before taking his gun and shooting her as well. Peterson, though, is still alive. Reports indicate that Walls then takes a pillow from the bed nearby and places it over her face and shoots her a second time in the head, this time killing the young woman. He then rummages through the trailer and finds a few $100s. After that, he takes, strangely enough, the fan he had knocked over. The guy kills 2 people, rapes the female, and he steals a fan. This shows us how unhinged and uncontrolled Walls was within the scope of his behavior. He had little restraint over his impulses once he gets involved in acting out his fantasies. And I guess in many ways, that's what made him so dangerous to the general public. Frank Walls, lest we forget, is only 19 years old at this time. This double murder and rape, however, does something to Walls. He is out of his element, so to speak, and the murders affect him in a way that changes his behavior around others. People around him begin noticing there is something awfully odd about scummy lowlife dishwasher Frank Walls. His roommate, a guy who goes by the name of Tom Animal Farnham, sees this on a much closer level because he lives with Walls. With all of that talk Walls is doing with his roommate about rape and murder, the roommate is beginning to take notice. Tom the Animal feels it's his obligation, seeing how there has been a spate of rapes and murders in the area, to call law enforcement and tell them about the twisted conversations he's had with his roommate. And thank God for this guy. The Animal, no doubt, saves lives just by making a phone call. Investigators show up near the middle of August and want to talk to this roommate of Animals, who seems to like to talk about killing and raping. And look, a guy like Walls, there is no way he can maintain any composure within such a situation. He just doesn't have it in him. As they begin talking to Walls while searching the shitty little place he lives in with the Animal, boy, oh boy, do they hit on a treasure trove of evidence and some rather surprising information about all the murder and rape around the county over the past 2 years. Let's take our second break and come right back. Frank Walls is charged with 2 counts of murder in August, the day after he murdered Algers and his girlfriend. They tack on a host of additional charges: kidnapping and armed robbery, grand theft, and possession of stolen property. Sometime later, Walls is indicted. The indictment includes charges for burglarizing a local car dealership and stealing a vehicle. He had driven the stolen car to a nightclub on Elgin Parkway a few hours before he murdered Algers and his girlfriend, which leads everyone to think maybe he saw them in the club and followed them home. Searching his apartment, investigators find an ice pick, a lock blade knife, a few other knives, a .22 caliber pistol, a holster, some ammo, a box cutter, and a hatchet. In addition, they discover graphic porn, a wallet, a chainsaw, and a blood-soaked pair of blue jeans. Sounds like the serial killer variety pack to me. They also find the fan he stole from the mobile home and link his fingerprints to it and the trailer. So the guy is no doubt caught, and he's going down for it all. That's for damn sure. As they begin to look at the past several years and several other murders in the county, investigators think Walls might be good for several of those as well. Walls claims that he only went to the trailer that night to rob the couple, but then they saw him and fought with him, and so he had to kill them. Effectively, as logic, that makes no sense within the context of the conversation. What in the hell does it matter if he only went there to rob them? He still committed rape and double murder. You see how he thinks? Why even say that? Also, how was it even possible for him to rob a trailer with 2 people inside and they not hear him? So law enforcement knows they're dealing with an idiot. Walls is indicted in August 1987 on double murder charges, as I said. More charges are imminent, but the prosecution is focusing on just the Algers-Peterson murders so as not to confuse the situation. The goal is to make sure Walls is found guilty. That's a smart move. Walls then confesses to the crimes, but pleads not guilty. Go figure. Yeah, I did it, but I'm going to plead not guilty. There is a ton of courtroom juggling by Walls' attorney, and the case drags on a bit. A year into it, Walls heads to trial. After 6 days of testimony, he is found guilty of the 2 counts of murder. The state announces that it is seeking the death penalty against Walls, and so that part of the case then gets underway. I'd like to let you know I have a new book out, the first book I've published in 5 years. It's called They Came for Blood. I have always wanted to write Westerns, a dream since my childhood. Tom Callahan was once President Ulysses S. Grant's deadliest kept secret, a lethal gun for hire leading a team of assassins nobody knew existed. Now those days are over, or so he thought. Therefore, when the past comes for blood, you either draw first or die trying. Look for They Came for Blood on Amazon.com or anywhere books are sold. Check it out. There's a lot of murder in the book, so it's not a departure from my day job. I need to take one more final break. I'll be right back with the conclusion and an update from 2025. Stick around. More Crossing the Line with M. William Phelps in 1 minute. One of the main investigators who worked on this case is an old friend of mine, Florida Department of Law Enforcement investigator Dennis Haley, who is one of the most humble, compassionate, empathetic investigators I have ever known. Haley has been involved in some of Florida's most high-profile serial killer cases, including the happy-face killer Keith Jesperson and Ted Bundy. Dennis Haley is a stand-up guy. I am honored to be able to call him a friend. He busted his ass on the Frank Walls case. He spent a lot of time with Frank Walls. Dennis and I have spoken about Walls on numerous occasions, a guy Dennis refers to as the embodiment of evil. Dennis even once said, "The death penalty in this state of Florida is designed for someone like Frank Walls. 5 families will forever grieve because of this man." Walls terrorized the county, but now, being found guilty, it's time for payback. Walls was sentenced to life in prison for Alger's murder and given the death penalty for the brutal murder and rape of Ann Peterson. He was sent to the state prison that August, 1988, where he would await the call from the governor to have him executed. But that sentence didn't go as planned. I mean, honestly, does it ever where the death penalty is involved? There always seems to be a glitch. Something that holds up the sentence for years and years, and in many cases, decades. The Florida Supreme Court threw out Walls' murder conviction in 1991, deciding that Circuit Court Judge Robert Barron should not have allowed testimony from a corrections officer, Vicki Beck. Beck had actually befriended Walls, who had told her he was faking mental incompetence. Why is it that these corrections officers get involved with the vilest creatures in the prison system? Can we not do a better job of hiring these people? Is it that freaking hard to get people in prisons who will not befriend or have romances with the most disgusting people on the planet? I'll stop there. In 1992, Walls was again tried and found guilty, and the judge reinstated his original sentences, one of which was death. In 1993, a second grand jury indicted Walls for the murder of 47-year-old Audrey Gigi, that Caltech employee who he stabbed to death inside her trailer. Notably, that trailer was a block away from the one Alger and Peterson were killed in that same summer. So you see, like I said, Frank Walls didn't go far. He didn't roam around the county or go into other states. Walls pleaded no contest to Gigi's murder, hoping the plea would save him from being given another death sentence. This vile creature sat in prison for the next 25 years or so, appealing everything again and again. In 2017, Walls tried a Hail Mary with an appeal based on claiming he has an IQ of 72, which is basically mentally disabled. What he was trying to do was say, you cannot put a mentally disabled person to death. He was leaning on the law. The problem he faced was he had scored 100 on every IQ test he'd ever taken. So again, he's just wasting everyone's time, prolonging the inevitable. Why is he wasting everyone's time? Because the system is designed in a manner of which he is allowed to. I'll stop there. This intellectual disability argument by Walls and his lawyer went on for another 6 years until Florida Governor Ron DeSantis signed the guy's death warrant on November 18th, 2025, sealing his fate. Walls was scheduled to be executed on December 18th, 2025. After all the appeals, all that wasted taxpayer money, and perhaps the most important part of it all, the mental torture for victims' families, the Florida Appellate Court came in with a decision about Walls after his attorney tried to stay the written order by the governor. Would it work? Once the governor signs the death warrant, pick out your clothes for your eternal place in hell, buddy. Because it's very likely you are going to be put down like the rabid animal you are. It was 6:11 p.m. on December 18th, 2025. Now, 32 years, 3+ decades after that second death sentence, when Walls was finally executed by lethal injection at the Florida State Prison. 18 others had been executed in Florida that same year, making it the highest number in a single year since the death penalty was reinstated back in 1976. I don't know about the 18 others, but I'm glad Frank Walls was put down. Come in any way you want to on the death penalty. I am not going to judge you, as you shouldn't judge me. There are arguments for and against, obviously. But make no mistake about Frank Walls. He is guilty of the most heinous crimes imaginable. If this guy would not have been caught, he would have continued raping and killing and killing and killing. That's it for this week. Sleep well. Be safe. Be aware. Sources for this episode include Serial Killer Remains Reviled After 30 Years, Tom McLaughlin, NWF Daily News, December 3rd, 2016. Walls Indicted on 2 Murder Counts by Cindy Brownfield, Pensacola News-Journal, August 11th, 1987. Frank Walls versus State of Florida, Appeal, 8/24/1992. My personal conversations with FDLE investigator, the man, Dennis Haley. Crossing the Line is executive produced by M. William Phelps, LLC, and Matthew Valentinas, Mom's Basement Management. Written by me, M. William Phelps. Audio mastering and mixing by Matt Russell. Music by Epidemic Sound. Original music written and performed by Thomas Mooney, Tom Phelps, and Matt Russell.